Your eyes, in response, physically, will start to scan the environment for any evidence that that is going to happen again, so that you can avoid it, so that you can control the outcome. Your eyes don't just see the world. Your eyes can reveal how you see yourself. Welcome to Monday Movements. We're talking about the psychosomatics behind the eyes. So the mind-body connection, the emotional, energetic connection to the presentations of our eyes within our body. So strap in, we're going to go over 3 key links briefly and then we're going to break it down. First key, psychosomatic connection of the eyes. We have distorted reality, focal issues, and number 3, stored grief or loss. Let's break those down so we can see how they all kind of work together cohesively, and so you can have a better understanding of what the metaphysical aspects can be related to when it comes to our biological presentations in this particular area of our body. Starting with the distorted reality. Often when we observe something in our life that we don't necessarily like, but we ultimately feel like we cannot escape it, we will then learn to avoid it. This leads to an avoidance of an aspect of truth, where you're only choosing to see selective parts of your reality, not the full picture, which is what leads to a distortion of reality. On the flip side, we can also have a distorted reality from a hyper-vigilance or an element of control of one area of our life, which tends to be a reaction, a natural reaction at that, to some kind of bad experience or trauma in your life. You don't want to relive it, so there's this element of control coming in, a protective mechanism. Your eyes, in response, physically, will start to scan the environment for any evidence that that is going to happen again, so that you can avoid it, so that you can control the outcome. This kind of is related to our nervous system. Eyesight is very much connected to our nervous system, being that it's so close to the brain anyway. But it's through these demonstrations that I'm talking about where we can see how this is physically represented within our eyes, but how it's also connected to the metaphysical aspects of our body. For example, when we move into key link number 2, focal issues. Well, this depends on the focus issues you are having presenting in the eyes. For example, you could have myopia, nearsightedness, which can translate to a fear of your future, a fear of wanting or a reluctance to want to look ahead and see what lies ahead in the future. Even a reluctance to commit or plan ahead for the future as well. So even commitment issues can play into this. Then you can have the opposite, hyperopia, which is farsightedness, which can actually translate to having issues focusing on the present, being here and now, being up close, or having issues with intimacy and accepting things when they get close to you. So not wanting that up close detail. There's that fear of intimacy there. Then another focal issue we could use an example is like blurred vision, which can translate metaphorically to having a blurred sense of reality. So not having a clear vision of your reality or your future reality, or perhaps even past memories, not having that clear memory recollection. Perhaps we want to blur a memory because of trauma. Perhaps we want to blur something that's coming up in the future, potentially, because we fear what that thing might be in the future. And just remembering when it comes to focal issues or eye issues, whatever we are hyper-focusing on, there will be a lack in another area. So where we lack that point of vision, the opposite, the hyper-focus will occur as a means for the body to create some form of equilibrium or balance. Or the opposite can occur. Whatever we are avoiding focusing on, we will then hyperfixate on something else, again, to create that equilibrium. And then that leads me into the third key link, the deepest link, where it all comes together. Stored grief and loss. You know, we say that the eyes are a window to the soul, but they are also a window to our heart, to our emotional body. And this is where we come full circle here. We get to the root cause. Often the parts that we avoid are the deeply uncomfortable parts of our past, current, future selves. But more on an emotional level, such as grief, shame, guilt, loss. You know, when it comes to eyes, this is where we especially store unexpressed emotions. So that's why it's more tied to the lack of release the lack of expressing our emotions through the eyes, which is where grief or loss in particular is what can often be stored when it comes to having eye issues. I mean, it's not surprising when we have an emotional outburst and we cry, this is where it comes from. It comes out of our eyes. So we know there's a biological connection to the metaphysical. And another example of this, how this biology connects to our metaphysics, it's like when we're avoiding a truth. We're avoiding something, our eyes will often dart across, whether it's conscious or not, whether we're lying consciously or whether we're unconsciously avoiding something. Our eyes tend to dart across in that moment that we're feeling or saying or expressing or picking up on something we want to avoid. You know, they talk about it in psychology. This is body language, the psychology of our body language. And our eyes will express this. Even when you think about moments where we're holding back tears, we don't want to express something in front of someone. Perhaps it doesn't feel like a safe enough space where you feel like you can express. Often we will look away. We will avoid that vulnerability, that intimacy with that person because we don't feel safe enough at that point, whatever the situation may be. And so we are going to be integrating this more on an even deeper level. In a week's time, we're going to go through a somatic practice, a somatic exercise with the eyes to really help instill this knowledge if this is something that has been really useful for you. But until then, I leave you with 3 parting questions to kind of begin this process of integration, this internal introspection. First question you can ask yourself, what are the actual facts of my reality right now? Versus what is a default story I tend to tell myself that doesn't actually match my reality. So that's question 1. Question 2, what part of my life am I uncomfortable facing? Or am I unwilling to face head on, to face clearly? And last and final question, how can I unpack my default patterns and rewrite the story so that it matches my reality in a way that is positive and loving? It's really just about changing those lenses in which you view your reality and perceive your world so that it's more fact-based, but also has a little love and magic to it as well. I hope you've enjoyed this episode on the Monday Movement series. I'll see you next week for a somatic practice for the eyes.